me ask Laura Yeretsian, as we hear Anjanette's report about the prosecution already thinking about how they can enhance the sentence, it's not too premature to do that, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, they could do it at this point, and they're going to use everything they can to do that. It's something, an area that you have in many of the states. In this case, I mean, this is one of those cases that's grabbed the attention of the entire world, and they're going to want Chauvin to do as much time as they can get, and anything they could do, including some of these enhancements, they're going to try to use at this point.
Laura, how important could this witness be, and is there a way to force him to testify?
I mean, he could be extremely important, especially if he's a percipient witness. If he was there and witnessed what was going on, what the officers did, and also he could testify about the physical condition of Mr. Floyd. I mean, what was he, and also what he had done prior. Did he ingest drugs? What condition medically, or did he seem fine? Was he breathing fine? What is going on overall? I mean, he could be a very critical witness, but I can understand. I mean, he's got some real issues here. He could be incriminating himself, and that's a decision the judge is going to have to make as far as whether to quash the subpoena or not. But I can understand why his attorney is trying to prevent his testimony in this case, because his client could be facing time in jail, especially with the colorful background that he's got. So we'll see what the judge is going to decide.
Lara Yeretsian, let me ask you this. There wasn't much Eric Nelson could do with some of the emotional testimony from bystanders and friends of George Floyd earlier. But here, the cross-examination is really pivotal, isn't it, of these so-called police experts?
Exactly. There's so much you could do with a child who happened to witness this, but this is very different. You're coming closer to what Derek Chauvin is, who he is, and what he does on a day-to-day basis. And I just loved it when Eric Nelson asked the question to Zimmerman, and that was, when you were trained, did he even have tasers? I mean, that's huge. Imagine, I can't even think of a time, even myself, when they didn't have tasers. Imagine that's when he was trained. I mean, he's pretty much saying, you're ancient. The way you think and your training is so out of date. So you cannot be the person who sits here and gives us an opinion on how reasonable it was to use the kind of force that was used here. You can't be the one. You saying this was unnecessary is pretty much worthless, because you were trained so many years ago and you're truly out of touch with what is going on the streets. You haven't been on the streets patrolled. I mean, he even said the last time he'd been in a physical fight with someone was 2 years ago. I'm not really sure what that was, if it really was 2 years ago. I mean, to me, this particular witness, I'm not sure why the prosecution, I know why the prosecution has it on, but I don't think they're getting what they really, really thought they were going to get out of him. I think Eric Nelson has done a great job with this witness, and he's scored more points than the prosecution has.
And Laura and Philip, both of you seem to think that he lost credibility as the session went on. Let me start with you, Laura.
He definitely did. I mean, you could see him answering some of these questions, basically admitting that he really has not been on the streets. He has not been on patrol duty for specifically 27 years. That's a long time. And he even admitted that he's mostly plainclothes officer. He doesn't even wear the uniform that often. Sometimes he'll wear the uniform. So then I could see Eric Nelson at some point arguing to the jury in closing, you could discount his testimony. I mean, he's not someone who can completely relate to Chauvin. He is only relying on a video, what the cameras have captured, and his experience and knowledge is a little out of touch. I mean, he gets some training, but just because he's the most senior officer doesn't give him extra anything here, extra credibility. Quite the opposite in reality, because he really has not been on the streets. He doesn't know what Chauvin's been experiencing during the last 20 years or so, patrolling the area, dealing with many of the suspects that he's been dealing with over the years. So basically, he can argue, you know what, you could discount what he said, he can't really testify to you what a reasonable officer would do in a situation like this.
And Lara Yeretsian, did prosecutor Matthew Frank get what he wanted out of this witness?
I think the witness may have gone a little further than the prosecution wanted him to, because if you notice, at one point he said even pulling him out, putting him on the ground and using the knee maneuver was uncalled for. And of course, he added that for this length of time was truly unnecessary and uncalled for. So I wasn't sure. Was he saying, I got the sense that he's saying that even pulling him out, getting him in the prone position on the ground with Derek Chauvin's knee on his neck, initial part uncalled for. But then I'm not sure what these officers would have done. If you've got a suspect who's resisting arrest, they can't get him into the vehicle. They've got to get him under control somehow. And if they, at that moment, if they decided to get him on the ground, I mean, it sounds pretty reasonable. Now, the question is really more, and the prosecution tried to kind of rehabilitate him by saying, you know, so the knee should not have been on his neck for that length of time. Was that necessary? And he said that was not necessary. I just saw the witness going a little too far, I think, even more than the prosecution expected or wanted him to. And again, this goes, I don't know what's going on in his mind, what's going on with this witness. I think probably everybody on that force, on that in that police department is trying to distance themselves from Chauvin. Everybody wants to say, you know what, I wouldn't have done this, and this is wrong. But maybe this was a bit too much.
Finally, before we let you sign off for the day, Eric Nelson getting high marks from you as well?
Definitely. I think he did a great job downplaying this witness's experience, basically almost nullifying it to the point where he's just, even towards the end of the questioning that we were just watching, I mean, he was almost getting him to the point of saying, oh, wait a minute, I was wrong when I said that it wasn't part of the manual or our policies that we use. Initially, he said they don't use that procedure, and now I think he's backtracking and basically saying, yes, of course, we can use the knee to the base of the neck or the shoulder. So he's just not a very solid witness. And I think Eric Nelson did a great job, first minimizing his experience, showing that he's out of touch, and also getting him to admit that it's very important to experience this in real time, to basically consider all the factors and not just what the camera captures.
All right. Well, Lara Yeretsian, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon, morning time in Los Angeles where you are, but we appreciate it. Good to have you on board.
Thank you for having me.